Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Traffic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday. I think today is the 4th. Today is the 4th. Wow, look at the difference between the some of the movers today and just a colossal amount of movers in the software growth space. So we'll go over all of that, or I'll try to go over some of that in this video. But this has been a market where you've needed to have your head on a swivel because there is a lot of movers to the upside. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. So let's talk about, what happened in the software group today first, up 3.9%. I just have the indices up here too. I'm just going to mention this in like within, 15 seconds, but, or at least try to make it very very short and sweet here. But gap up in the SPY and the Qs. We're getting to overbought levels, but this is a nice move. I've talked about how you can use these value areas. We started the month above the value area, also the 5-day moving average to keep things simple. And that's a strong market. That's a strong trending market when we're out to new highs and we're trending above that 5-period moving average. We're also living up to the December hype, right? We know, things that we know versus things that we don't know, right? And the reason why I say that is because the market is always a bunch of uncertainties, but it's also trying to put to find your edge in trading and give yourself an understanding of where there's higher probabilities where your success rate is, right? And that's in November and December, for example. Also, January is usually a strong month, right? Those are your stronger seasonal months, right? So we try to basically, understand where the market is giving us a little bit of an advantage, and it's definitely they're in that stronger seasonality. Now, of course, that has to mesh with other indicators such as price, for example, and that's what we're seeing here, and in the Qs, which have been really strong over the last week. And again, just to take a step back, I remember about a week and a half ago, the Qs were lagging a little bit, right? And since we kind of hit December, it's basically been the accelerator down in terms of, what we've seen here in the Qs, which is breaking out pretty decently here to the upside. And I just wanted to show the 1-hour chart here. Notice that we are, if you look at the RSI down here, we are overbought. It doesn't mean that we can't stay overbought, but we're pretty hard overbought now in the short term, just in the short term, right? And then the last thing, and again, this is just evidence of what the type of market that we're in right now, which is a bull market, right? What was strong in about a week and a half ago, which was small caps, made this huge move and outperformed. They're just hanging out and digesting. They're not really going anywhere right now, breaking down. Clearly, the breadth right now isn't the strongest, and that's because breadth and the small caps go hand in hand, right? When you have strong breadth, things like the banks are doing well. Some of the healthcare names are doing well, right? And some other areas of the market, but right now you don't have the small caps participating. But again, I don't think that's anything majorly to worry about, considering they're digesting some of those moves. Maybe they come in and this gap is just about been filled. But in any event, just to kind of give you just an overall view about what's happening. So yes, this is quite, I would say, rare to have what we saw in these earnings reports that came out. And by the way, that's been the story as we're getting kind of more towards the tail end of earnings. But that's been the whole that's been one of the stories that's really kind of kept me in this market is we're continuing to see strong earnings reports. Marvell, Pure Storage, Salesforce. I mean, these are all monster moves, in this growth software type space, tech space. So that's been something that we've seen. It's not every company reporting strong earnings, but every quarter, one of the things that I do is put together a strong earnings gap list, right? Because those are the names that are usually going to be your market leaders for the quarter, and that's been the story very much. In terms of what we've seen is that the names, I was on pre-market prep this morning, talking to the tech analyst from Wedbush Securities, and his name is Joel, and he was talking about how software names are just running after earnings. And I specifically asked the question. I said, do you think that part of the reason why we're seeing you know, some of these software names just continue to and run, you know, like an AppLovin, for example, is because some of these institutions were not exposed enough. And that's certainly the case. And, you know, we see this time and time again is that if institutions are not positioned the right way, if they don't have exposure, enough exposure in a name, what they're forced to do is buy the name after they have the earnings gap. So, you know, you may think on these big earnings gaps, and this was a huge one, 162 to 260 or 240. And you're probably, you know, so this is just an easy textbook example. I bring this one up a lot, but, you know, if you thought that this was like, oh my God, I can't buy it up here after the or big earnings gap, this was at 240, right? And even the high that, you know, where it closes 244, the stock's now sitting at 369. So would I say, you know, buy the stock here? No, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I'm just saying that these names are running. And case in point, you know, name and you know, it's important to kind of monitor these names and watch basically, you know, where they are and what they're doing after their earnings report if they had a very strong report. And by the way, we're seeing this pattern a lot, right? Where, you know, Snowflake was a $400 stock at one point. Now you've got these names that are coming back and they're coming back hard and they're not even close to some of them. Some of them have gotten, you know, have gotten back to you know, their, you know, Salesforce, for example. The Salesforce finally broke out to new highs. Like this stock was not at new highs up until just recently. So, you know, you're looking at some of these names, some of them, some in the software space and the high growth space have not made it back to new highs. And some of them, you know, are just breaking out like a Salesforce, which is a big company. It's a strong company. So again, it's just very interesting to me. And there's a lot of these that are doing this. Like Twilio is one of those. Like we're seeing this all over the place, right? Big decline, right? Stan Weinstein, stage 4 decline. Then you have this base that goes on for basically 2 years, up and down and up and down. And there's your break out of a base. And that's happening right now in Twilio, which is continuing to move higher. Square is another one. You know, I put this on Twitter just a little while ago because I'm being a little bit, I like to have a little bit of fun too. But this is a textbook cup and handle pattern. Here's your cup, right? Here's one handle. This actually is two handles. Here's another handle, right? Move down and boom, you know, move higher. And again, take a step back and look at the weekly chart, right? And it's the same type of pattern that's happening. This one I think is even more constructive because you have like, you know, I like the inverted head and shoulders down here. Again, some of these things, they take a lot of patience. That's why I never buy in these types of things, right? You just wait until it does its thing. Right. There's no point in my opinion. Again, I'm a trend trader, so I'm giving you, you know, I'm giving you a lot of sense of what I tend to look at, but there's no point in buying on the way down. Let it bottom out. Let it, you know, let it shake everybody out and then wait for it to start turning up again. That's where your gains are going to happen. Because if you bought in here, or if you bought in here, or you bought in here, you're sitting and you're underwater and you're not happy, right? And you know, and that's a thing that these stocks are going to have to work their way through is overhead supply. But this is just so much easier once you start waiting for it to turn back higher. And the, you know, the market webs do a great job of telling you, hey, it's breaking out of the you know, it's breaking out of the value area. So um, oh, I wanted to bring this up because I don't like to just talk about winners, right? That's for Twitter and the victory laps and so forth. You know, what we do at Tribeca Trade Group is real trading, right? And we talk about our winners and losers. You'll find if people just talk about winners, most of them aren't even really trading, to be honest. But this is what I got a lot of questions about. I went through and I put on a video about China, right? And I talked about option flow in China that it's going out for a long time period, going out to May. I saw calls go up in, I think that was CHAU. It doesn't matter. So one was CHAU, one was YINN, which was going out to January of 227. So lo and behold, someone, you know, and again, this is just funny, but I saw multiple people say, "Oh my God, you know, China's down. I don't understand. You know, wow, this didn't work." And I'm like, you have to have a little bit more patience than that, especially if you're relying. You know, I take a look at option activity and I look at the technicals, right? But if you're doing that type of thing, if you're looking at option activity, right, and it's not, you know, they're not positioning in next week's calls or a month out in calls. If they're going out 6 months or going out, over a year, then you have to have a little bit more patience than a couple days. So again, that's the situation. And again, I'm still in some this January calls, and I'll decide to do something different if those, calls don't work out. But again, we cover both, the names that work and the names that don't, or the name, how do you manage the names that aren't working. But let me move on because again, a lot of nice movers. I mentioned Shopify. So this was a name that I don't know if I don't know if I mentioned this in yesterday's video, but not Shopify. I'm sorry, Snowflake. I'm messing up my symbols. But what I like here is we're now going to be approaching this gap, and I don't have any resistance up here. It's all about 229. So I'm going to try to stay in this thing for a while. We'll see it. We'll see how that happens because I get impatient too. But 216 is like the next level of resistance. Now we could do a whole bunch of different things in here and go sideways and go every other area in between. But for now, I'm long this name, and let me go through a couple other charts that I find interesting. Bitcoin really made a big, nice move, but notice where it rallied to. So again, like this is short-term stuff, but it's nice, isn't it nice to know where your short-term resistance is, right? So I'm on the 1 hour chart, and that's the value area for the week, and that's the value area for the month, right? Now I know everybody's fixated on 100,000, but I'm, then what? Okay, so yeah, I think Bitcoin could take out 100,000, right? But then what's going to happen, right? So I would be paying attention to my levels here, and that's 99,720 if you want to round up and say 100,000 because that's a technical level. But I have to say this looks pretty good. It just needs to break through, right? And it may cause a little bit of reading people out a little bit as it tries to break that. But I think this is very, very good looking. And I think I mentioned Square already. I am long Square. I got long Square in the TTG trend portfolio, I think a couple weeks back. And I also own a little bit of stock too in that as well. Um, what else? So I mentioned with IWM not really moving much. Notice what's going on in the financials, right? The financials, which have been the market leader for a good portion of this year, notice that there's a little bit of profit taking, but I would not turn a blind eye to the financials, right? Watch this move into the 20-day moving average. I was talking about the private equity companies. I actually bought a little bit of Blackstone today, right? So again, it's not a hot software company, and I know that's what's very exciting right now, and I'm excited. How can you not be excited about, how much was this group up today? 3.9%, and every name that has anything to do with software is flying. And so is, cyber names had a really strong day as well. Right. But I would watch some of these areas that are kind of coming into support. Right. So I like Blackstone. I'm also still long KKR to move into the 20-day moving average. And then Apollo is actually showing the most strength. Apollo could be a possible candidate to go into the S&P 500 on Friday. Usually after the close, Friday, those are announced. Reminder that we've got quadruple witching 2 weeks from Friday. So bear that in mind, right? That might change things up a little bit, but I think that this is interesting. Also, a few other names like some with crypto exposure. Hood had I think it was their investor day. They're talking about getting into sports betting, right? So it's another avenue of possible revenues for Robinhood, and I like this name, right? MSTR is seeing a lot of call activity again, right? This is interesting. There's your bounce off of the 20-day moving average. I got a nice level for you to watch. And again, this was set up for like a day trade for today, but take a look at where this stopped, right? So this activated the bullish 80% roll, and we tagged the top of the value area. So watch 410, call it 410.20, but you're going to have to fight through some resistance here. But this was a nice little trade from about 375 to 410. So giving you some nice day trading setups, and if you took this trade that we kind of went over at the end of the day in the trading room, you could leave a little portion of the trade on in case Bitcoin wants to rip to new highs. But I think that's going to be very interesting. I'm trying to keep the videos kind of real short because with days like this, I could tend to kind of talk about a lot of different stocks. But we talked about the semis, which have also have done well, and Marvell was nice catalyst for that overnight. Taiwan Semi, one of the better names on our list. I did take some profits in Broadcom, right around the open this morning, and I think that name kind of it gave back. I took some profits around 174, right around the open. Stock sold off down to about 170. So I think that was the smart thing to do. But yeah, I mean, look at all these names that are, moving this way. So, very impressive. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Again, a lot of momentum in this market. We are a little bit short-term overbought, and the breadth has not been perfect. But man, there's a lot of nice moves. Look at SAP, by the way. This is another name that we put on the watch list. Again, like, a lot of people don't have eyes on this stock, but look at the breakout that happened in SAP. I did not take this one. I looked at it on the day that it broke out, which was on Monday. But look at the follow through in SAP. Really, really nice move in this one. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.